Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to JFD Brokers Traders Tea Time with me, Darius Onchauskas. Today's the 27th of July 2018. So welcome everyone, welcome to this last trading day of this week. And of course, welcome to this afternoon session. So where we're going to have a look at a few instruments, which I believe are quite developing interestingly, if I can put it that way. But before we do that, of course, let's quickly have a read through our risk disclaimer. So the content of this webinar does not constitute investment advice or investment recommendation, and does not in any way constitute an invitation to acquire any financial instrument or product. As always, a few seconds for you to read the rest, and we can continue. Also, just a very quick reminder of our JFD Brokers website, and specifically, if you go in here, click on JFD Research, it will take you to our page, which we update on a daily basis. We throw out different good material here, let's say like a different analysis, so please check us out. I believe you can find something useful here for yourselves, guys. So, yep. Feel free to check us out. But for now, let's have a look at the charts. So the first one I want to touch on is the S&P 500. Now, yesterday we can see that we got here an inside candle, and certainly now at the moment, even though we have seen a bit of like bearishness kicking in yesterday, still the candle closed in the positive zone. We're still above this short-term upside support line here that has been running since around the 2nd of July. So we're until this line remains intact, we're probably going to stick more to the upside. And like I said, at the moment, it seems that it wants to continue pushing higher. Certainly, we can see that we've managed to break this key important area of resistance that it was initially acting as a resistance area. This area between the 2790 and the 2800, from which, yep, the index kind of continued pushing higher. We saw this strong candle here on Wednesday to the upside, where the index found its resistance at around 2848 mark. So keep an eye on that one, and keep an eye on that level today. Certainly will probably act as a very strong potential area of resistance today as well. So let me just jump into a 4-hour chart, today, like I said, if we get a nice break here above this 2845 mark, now this is where it could become interesting, because we could potentially see a move towards this all-time high here that we have around the 2875 mark. Now this level has been the approximately near the highest point that we saw in I do apologize, this is where I stalled a little bit in January, the end of January, guys, so keep an eye on it. So keep an eye on this level. That's of course not exactly that level, but just around that area could be a good potential area for a test. So keep an eye on it, keep an eye on the all-time highs again. So let's see what it wants to do with it, but we'll only consider these highs if we get a nice break here above the 2848 mark. Now, as you can see that yesterday, on Wednesday, it acted as a very nice area of resistance. But on the downside, if we suddenly get a break here below this upside support line, well, this is where it could become interesting more for the bears, and we could see them potentially driving this index back towards this 2800, the psychological 2800 level. And of course, if that doesn't hold, slightly below that, we do have the 2790 area, the 2790 level that I was talking about. But if that even doesn't hold, well, I mean, this could turn out to be quite ugly for the index, and we could see further decline. So for now, guys, just keep an eye on this level right here, the 2848. Let's see what it wants to do, and let's see how this this market is going to open today. Let me jump into one of the commodities quickly that I really wanted to touch on, and that's WTI. Now, the WTI, we can see that continues to trade here slightly below that, of course, slightly below this upside support line that has been running here since around the end of August 2017. So we're still below that, but what's more interesting is that we are now in this little range here between approximately 67.15 mark. Let me just quickly adjust this back here, and below this 67.15, and slightly below this, sorry, above this 67.15, and below this 69.60 area approximately there. So just bear with me. Let me quickly readjust the levels here again. There we go. So we're stuck in this little range now. As you probably are aware, we need to see a nice good clear break either above this line here or below. Now with the upside, it's slightly a bit more tricky, because even though we get a nice break here above the 69.60, we also would need to see a nice good close above this upside support line in order to kind of get at least more comfortable with the upside scenario. But to be honest, for us to kind of become even more comfortable with the upside scenario, we would need to see a nice good close above this level right here at around 71.65 mark, approximately there. So keep an eye on it, keep an eye on this level. Certainly, like I said, if we get a nice break and a close here above that level, then yep, it could potentially open the path towards these higher levels. And a good one to watch is this 74.80 mark, which is approximately here, approximately near the highs that we saw here around the beginning of July. And yep, and if that doesn't hold, well, it could potentially push it a little bit higher again. But of course, let's not jump ahead of ourselves too much. Let's see first if it wants to actually move above this upper bound of the range, and then eventually above the upside support line. If of course this continues to act as a very nice, good, strong resistance area, well, we could maybe see a drop here towards the lower bound of the range, where it could become interesting if we get a break and a close below the 67.15 mark. Now if we do get something like this, this could open the path towards these lows that we saw around the mid-June, so around the 18th and 17th, or sorry, around the 18th of June. Now this level could be a good one, good potential area of support initially, and that's around the 64.10. So first, guys, of course, I'll probably repeat myself again. Keep an eye on this little range. Let's see what it wants to do with it. Let's see which way it breaks and closes. Now, another one that I really wanted to touch on is actually Ripple. Now, a lot of people don't look at it, and probably everybody is mainly focused on Bitcoin, but nevertheless, it's one of the big cryptos out there, and we could eventually squeeze a nice trade out of this. Now, looking at this bigger picture, you can see that it went far down here from its highs that we saw around the $3 mark, $3.30 mark, and in last December. So now we're stuck here in this little range between the 0.4230 and approximately 0.5220 mark. So in this range, at the moment, we can see that it tried to hit it. Well, it hit a few times the 0.4230, but never kind of moved below it and never closed below it. So something to keep an eye on, guys. If we suddenly get another drop here, continue monitoring this low. If we need to see a nice good close below this level in order to kind of position ourselves for maybe another drop to the downside, where we could start examining the 0.20 mark. Now, a good round number of 0.20 could be a nice area of support for this crypto, if, like I said, if we get a break here below the lower side of the range. Now, but the most important, of course, for all those bulls out there, if we get a nice break here above the 0.5220, that doesn't really mean exactly that we're still going to continue pushing higher and higher and higher. But of course, is going to be half of the let's say half of the way, because we still have this downside resistance line here, this long-term downside resistance line that has been running here since around the 2nd of February, and we could see a test of that initially. But if that closes and if that breaks, and if we get a nice close above it, now this is where it could definitely become more interesting for the bulls, as we could eventually move towards this 0.7060 mark. So keep an eye on it. Keep this level acted as a very nice area of resistance here in the beginning of June, also in around mid-May. So good level to watch, but only, of course, if we get a nice close above this downside resistance line. Something for you guys to keep an eye on. Certainly this is not going to happen probably soon, but nevertheless, you could potentially put your alerts here at these two levels, just to kind of keep on monitoring it. Okay, let's jump into one of the I would probably say real pairs, and let's have a look at the EURJPY. Now, EURJPY is now below its upside support line, this midterm upside support line that has been running since around the end of May here. Certainly, this is adding with more negative outlook to it, and certainly we can see that on the daily chart here, the pair managed to find its support around this 50 EMA, and at this point we can see that the bulls came in and started pushing it back. All eyes are of course on today's close. Let's see where it wants to close, but to be honest, it does still have some room here to go further down, and especially going into next week. So keep an eye on this level right here, around this level, of course, the 128.55 or even actually 128.50. So you could eventually keep an eye on it. Certainly this could be a potential area of support, maybe even dropping a little bit lower here, but nevertheless, initially, of course, we'll be aiming for this 128.55 mark. Let's see what he wants to do with it. And to be honest, judging by this picture right now, there is a good chance for this one dropping further down. But on the upside, let's say if we get a sudden reversal here back to the upside and we get some sort of surprise move here, then, well, keep an eye on this upside support line, the short, medium term upside support line. If it comes back above it and closes above it, then, well, this could be interesting for the bulls, and we could see maybe a continuation move here towards the 130.30 area, which acted as a nice area of resistance here in the around the beginning of June. So we could start testing that level, but if that doesn't hold, we could kind of start moving back up here towards these previous levels, these previous key areas. And another one to watch, a good one to watch, is the 130.75 mark. Now that is only, of course, if we get a nice break above the 130.30. But yep, this is what's in regards to the upside. Let's see if it happens, but at the moment we're more bearish than bullish on this one. Looking at the Aussie dollar, and Aussie dollar the whole week here just moving sideways, stuck in this little range between the 0.7360 and the 0.7445. Certainly, for us right now, we are quite neutral on this one, and just going to continue observing these key levels and kind of class them as potential breakout areas. So let's say if we get a nice break above the 0.7445, certainly it could add a bit of more of a bullish sentiment to it, but to be honest, still we have a good area of resistance here, potential good area of resistance at around 0.7485 mark. So keep an eye on it, keep an eye on this level, but only if we get a nice break and a close above the 0.7445. On the downside, well, we would need to see a nice good move here towards the 0.7360 and then eventually a break of that level, so that we could start positioning ourselves for the lows that we saw here and the beginning of July, and to be more specific, the 2nd of July. So something like this could happen basically, guys. So this is where you could eventually position yourselves maybe for a small short-term trade, for a small short-term sell trade, and where you could probably go in here slightly below the 0.7360 and aim for the 0.73 mark. So very good potential area of support, initial support, but if that doesn't hold, well, this could be opening the path towards lower levels here, towards the downside. Just to kind of point out the fact that we're still below this downside resistance line, something for you guys to keep an eye on, for us to kind of start becoming more bullish on the from the longer term perspective. We would need to see a nice good close above this downside resistance line, so keep an eye on it. And the last pair that I really wanted to touch on is NZDUSD. So let's jump into that one, and again, slightly mixed picture here. Looking at the weekly chart here, we can see that the candle here is with the small body, and probably this is how it's going to end up this week. It's probably going to wait for next week, as we do have some news coming out of from New Zealand next week. So something for you guys to keep an eye on for next week as well. But today we're probably going to end up somewhere here, and you currently can see that we are trading around this 21 EMA, and to be honest, it found its good support here at around 0.6765, but for us to become more bearish on this one, we need to see a nice good move below that area in order to kind of, and especially a close below that area in order to kind of start considering the 0.67150 or even the 0.6690, which was the lowest point here in July that we had in the beginning of July. So yeah, guys, something like for you to keep an eye on as well, but we'll consider these lower levels only if we get a nice break here below the 0.6765. On the upside, well, again, this is the as you probably already guessed it, this is the level to watch, and for us to kind of become more let's say to take the bullish side, we would need to see a nice good close above this level, and yep, this is where we could start positioning ourselves for a potential touch of this 0.6920 mark. Now this could be a good area to target, but only if we get a nice good close above the 0.6850. Certainly there are some good levels above here, but to be honest, let's not rush into this. Let's see what it wants to do with this level first. If it actually, just in general, does it want to reverse back to this level and break it? So this is the big question. This is something for you to keep an eye on next week. But like I said, I wouldn't probably recommend jumping into this one right now. First of all, let's see if we get a nice break here below the 0.6765, or we actually get a strong move back up here and a nice break above the 0.6850. So something for you guys to keep an eye on. Some good levels, some good potential breaking points. Let's see what it wants to do with that, and let's see how it closes today. So, but for now, thank you very much for watching and listening, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. If you finished trading, yep, that's it. Yep, fantastic weekend for you guys. But if you're trading the US session, happy US session. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.